Welcome to the Mason Dukacek Show. This episode is brought to you by Workforce Alchemy, helping leaders improve hiring, engagement, and retention while uncovering people-related profit leaks hidden in everyday operations. David Homan is the author of Orchestrating Connection, How to Build Purposeful Community in a Tribal World, and the founder of Orchestrated Connecting and SOAR Connect. For more than a decade, he has helped entrepreneurs, investors, and family offices transform their networks into high trust, high impact communities that drive real opportunity through a global network of more than 2,200 founders and investors. David focuses on turning international relationships into meaningful partnerships and sustainable deal flow. If you want to understand how community becomes a true business engine, this conversation is for you. David, so happy to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mason. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what first opened your eyes to the difference between simply networking and truly orchestrating connection?
So I'll take everyone back a little bit, which is I grew up in a small town in Florida. And for the last 25 years, I've made New York City my home. So the biggest thing that opens up my eyes is the city that I've lived in and how the more and more you're here, the more it feels like a small town. But there's no way when you randomly show up on a street corner, you see somebody you haven't seen in 10 years who just got back in touch with you. But that is a frequent occurrence here because it's a city full of connection. But that catalyst moment, was running a large scale global arts foundation. I followed the prescribed script of how to network to talk to people who look like you, talk like you, or in the same circles as you. And then after the housing bubble recession, 2008, Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme and the world falling apart, it didn't work that way anymore. And I purposely chose to get out of my comfort zone, to go into rooms that I didn't belong in with causes that weren't apropos to what I was needing to focus on, like women's health, investing in Black and brown founders, local politics, mental health, climate change. And everywhere I went, I met a certain type of person who would now be called a connector. And I befriended the people who knew everyone in the room, who were the reason the room was formed, or they were the only person I needed to meet that day. Because what time would tell is while I built authentic relationships, what I built was this cascading set of ecosystems, super nodes, connecting connectors to each other. And that's when I realized community was more important than network. And when you focus on the person and giving them value, especially that type of person, you get an immense amount back.
I love it. What's the biggest mistake that you see leaders make when they're trying to build community around their businesses?
Well, the biggest mistake is that leaders don't often try to build community. They hire somebody they pay a very small amount to manage or build their community, when in the end, leaders need to talk to other leaders. And so there's a
are you
lot of
referring more
times
specifically like online, or what about in person? Or
No, I've seen global CEOs walk into a room that was their room for their business, and they didn't know a soul in it because somebody on their team befriended everyone. That was the connector and really was the one everyone had built trust with. They wanted the access to the CEO, but the CEO hadn't spent time to build that trust. Their schedule was too busy. They didn't understand the importance of somebody because it wasn't related to the next deal, whatever it might be. And I've just seen countless mistakes where people don't value the people who feed their ecosystem as much as the person who closes the deal or gets them to show up and look really pretty at some conference or event. Community in business is different. That takes an investment of time on both sides.
so what would you say to a CEO who has been convinced that they should hire this out to someone who's not paid very well and it's not a priority? Or I'm not gonna say it's not a priority, but the situation you've described. What would you say to a CEO who has made that decision and is currently living that air quote strategy right now?
So I'll give you an example from a family office event I hosted a couple years ago with a really amazing friend and his husband, who was a private equity guy. This guy had done probably 30 of the known deals of companies we know on this planet. And he was very skeptical. He had had that mandate of everything was built to him. He knew what to do, and his excellence was what made him and everyone around him a lot of. I got him to pause because my world of relationship value and the soft currency of being curious and vulnerable seemed like a really poor move for anyone to focus on from his part. He was, shall we say, more than critical of me. And I don't really talk about who I know or who I interact with or what my world is, because if I were to name drop the people that I can WhatsApp or I've interacted with, most of those would be on people's wish lists. And for many of them, I consider them my friends, or I consider the people who have their trust my close friends. So I sat with this guy who hadn't hired that person, and I got him to boast about his top 5 deals. And I got him to talk about how, there were really only 2 people he needed to nurture to get those 5 into fruition. And then I asked him if he was still in touch with both those people. And he paused. And then he admitted that he hadn't been in touch with one of the 2 who had brought him the top deal of his life, the second best deal of his life, and the fourth best deal. And I helped him realize that by not nurturing that relationship, even if there wasn't an outcome in front of him, he had missed out on the last, I think, 15 years of what that friendship could have kept bringing him, because he wasn't valuing being in front of the people or even spending the time to nurture it. Because when he needed something, it was great to nurture that relationship. When the other person needed something or just to maintain it, it wasn't worth his time. And so from the quantification standpoint, if somebody brought you your first and second best deals, you should always stay in touch with them. But
It's
because
funny
those
you
had been
say
a
that.
few years prior, yeah, go ahead, please.
That's very good advice, because I have been on the other end of that, where I have done plenty of really good things for lots of people, and they show up when they need something. And I know exactly who those people are and exactly why they're calling. And it's not to say hi or how are you or is there anything I can do for you? That's a one-way street. And I'm very aware of that. And I allocate my time and my attention and my resources in other directions with other people because of it. And I don't think that I'm any different than most people.
No, but people don't value relationships. The mission of my community, Orchestrated Connecting, is to make relationship value valued. Because what I've seen time and time again is when you connect because it's opportunistic, you could put on the best face in the world. And when you get something from it, you can even be a little bit grateful. But there's no strategy in building long term because you needed something as a creature of the moment. And people get away with that constantly, often because they have something of value, either a business people need, they have money that people need, or they have relationships they were often born into. But I've studied for the last 11 years now, running this community of connectors, which is now actually 2,600 globally. I've
Nice.
looked at what happens when we refocus on the relationships first. And in my own startup, which is called Soar Connected, a lot of it is about protecting us from takers. Like literally in one of the parts where we're building the code and the team that's building this laughed, but there's something called the block list. And the description of it is how to filter out assholes.
So give me a tip or two about how to do that.
So somebody comes up to you, maybe introduced by a friend or name dropping a friend, or you meet them at a conference and they look good, they sound good, like their bio looks good, and you have a rapport, you feel really heard, and they feel audacious enough to just tell you what they need. What most people will do is go, "Oh, you want to meet Gina? She runs HR at this company I just met. You should meet her." For me, I say, "Oh, well, I'd really love to support you. Would you honor me by giving me a paragraph on why you want to meet this person and what you're after?" 90% of the time, the intentional person will get it to you, and the person who wanted something from you won't do it. They just want to be handed it. They don't want to do the work. And then after I get the opt-in of, say, this affirmation person, Gina, I will ask the person, will you follow up? And again, I use the term honor very specifically. Will you honor the chain of connection so I know what happens from it? And if I've made one intro for somebody, that my rule is a maximum of 3 before I know this, I see whether they will close that feedback loop or not. And if they don't do it, I don't associate with them again. I made it clear I'm going to give you a value. The exchange to honor is to thank me and let me know what happens. And if you can't be bothered when I'm handing you a relationship I've put months, years, or decades into, then you're not honorable back, which is how I need to filter or relegate you out. And so many people just aren't intentional with what they ask. They just want to be passed on to the opportunity be around you, besides you, through you. If you actually feel they focus on you, then they'll respect and hear you first. And the best one of this, and this is how the vetting to get into my network. And probably shouldn't say this in a public setting, but I do. But my world is to only bring in natural givers. So I will sit on every call I do. I sometimes do hundreds within a quarter to bring people into my community, and I offer them something. A lot of people are really grateful. They feel heard. It's really nice. But the only ones I let in sit back uncomfortably and they say to me, I, I, how can I help you? Or are there other people you know that I can help? Because a natural giver is uncomfortable being given to first, and a taker or a slightly grateful taker thinks they deserve it. The people who deserve it are the people like you or me who are those natural givers and offer first without an expectation. And my work has been, and my book is about how to put the guardrails up, how to look at the patterns. And when you see those people coming, what I would say is now I've made clear in my life, they can't keep coming. And if they do, then I will take extra steps to make sure they can't come to the people that I trust, because they have proven time and time again they do not value what you give. They only value to take what you know.
And this is obviously your wheelhouse, but I suspect that someone who is authentically and truly a giver and is doing things for the right reasons, you hate to say it, but they may be so few and far in between that when you're genuinely like that, and there are so many others that aren't, it makes it real easy to stand out in a positive way for the right reasons.
100% Mason. And the rule I made for my network 11 years ago, which is the same to this day, is besides being a connector and what we would call an action oriented natural giver, you literally have to be somebody I or somebody in my network would leave my children with, or you cannot make an intro to me. And I had someone, and I can't mention who because it's a ongoing issue, but I agreed to take a call with. I was super clear that I couldn't help them with the project. They jumped on the phone. They pitched me in 4 minutes about how I should help them fill everything they need with celebrities and wealth holders for something they're doing. And after 15 minutes, I extricated myself. I think they're probably aware they didn't handle it right because I had said, I cannot spend my time to fill something that benefits you in another city where I don't live. And the guy who introduced me to this person profoundly apologized, took her off of his lists, said that he would not engage with this person again, and asked if he could make it up to me in any way because he knew he had wasted 15 minutes of my time and broken my trust because I had been clear about the intentions. She had been clear and misled him and me. But it goes further because then this person is now starting to reach out to people that I had mentioned I could possibly reach out to as if I endorsed it. And so, since I do have a world of very privileged private people, if I say, hey, this person is reaching out, I wouldn't leave my kids with them. Who would you talk to if somebody said that? You would relegate them as well. And we need to encourage positive behavior and how people learn that taking is not the option because it is a norm. But people don't understand the strategy behind building the trust first and asking second, because then it can stay relational even when transaction occurs.
So, how can an executive tell whether their network is actually generating value versus just spinning their wheels?
When you go on vacation and you think your inbox is going to be completely full, and then in the next few days, it just empties out because you have to generate the excitement to come back to you. This is what happens to me even when I have, a very nice like spring break week with my kids, like I have coming up. But when you build an authentic network, there is a respect for your time. When you have an employee base for which you've actually given them the strategy for what you're doing, not just the necessity of what has to be done. When you're not measuring somebody based on performance metrics, or as I've made clear to everyone who's ever worked with me, I've had to yell at a few, I've been like, listen, the medical world does not exist where you can set up a dentist or a doctor appointment at 7 a.m. You have to do it during working hours. So health is more important than what I need. So when you have to do something, go do it and tell me you have to do it. And I've had so many people shocked because most of the people in their organization have judged them for like going to get a root canal at 2 p.m. because they needed to work that day, when they hypocritically would take the entire day off as a manager or a CEO for their own aforementioned root canal. So when you get to the human part of it, when you get to the fact that you can have a conversation that builds trust, you can have interactions that are not simply based on metrics. What people do is they feel like they're part of a community, even if it is a work community. People feel like they're going to be valued for what they give. And when you actually create that elevation, not just of self, but of a network, of a business, the performance in every metric from everyone who does this as a career coach or a workforce transformation coach, everyone says when everyone feels more engaged and more heard and more seen, there's better innovation, better outcome. And we still don't get it because we think the industrial mindset of do your job better than somebody else and keep your job and execute works. And now AI and everything is going to replace anything that would be an automated type of job. And the jobs that are going to thrive and excel are those that necessitate people, interaction, trust, strategy, things that technology could augment but not replace.
So many leaders say that they value relationships, but their calendars tell a very different story. What practical shifts can they make to prioritize meaningful connection without losing productivity?
Any leader I know, their business is based on a series of relationships and introductions made for them. They might be really great at building or scaling their company, but somebody got them to their first investor. Somebody got them to their first client. Somebody convinced them to join a board and sponsor like a cancer walk. If you don't put at least a quarter of your time into the relationships you have and those that could develop, then when you need something, you won't have developed it. So it is simply a choice for how you manage your time. I get criticized by those who look at my organization all the time that I spend too much time helping people. It's just the nature of it. And so my startup, we're generously hosted by Microsoft. We finished the second round of what they give for free hosting. They changed their rules justifiably to be you have to be ventured backed by a certain group of people to get the next 100K. And I shook a tree. I shook actually 11 trees. And my startup went from maybe having to raise more money or shift a lot of resources to having $250,000 a year for the next 2 years for that support. Because I built relationships with people without an agenda who happen to be in similar spaces with interests that I have. And I had helped them in the past. So when I came calling, a high school friend, a friend who's formerly Microsoft, who I've introduced to another professor to talk about purpose, to a VC based in Israel, who I've just been helping with a few introductions to help her. All those people took the call because I had offered value without an ask. And when I needed an instant value, I already had the people who took the call. So if you want to talk about a waste of time, try going after something when you need it. You want to talk about a profound use of time, understand and build the ecosystem that you need before you do. Therefore, the ROI is much more instantaneous. There's less waste and there's more ongoing opportunity because you prioritize relationships in an ongoing way, not in an opportunistic.
I'm not positive if this quote is attributed correctly, but I think it was Mark Twain that said, when you need a friend, it's too late to make one.
Yeah. We
So
went through this thing called COVID, Mason, and everyone who built relationships or could build them thrived. And everyone who had relationships that were circumstantial were isolated and alone. And now we're back to the similar habits of going, well, why don't people get me? I talked to them for the last half an hour at a conference. Didn't they get me? Can't they give me something? We live in a world where we feel that we have to take first. And when you would shift that mindset and you just strategically look at who do I respond to? Who can I give to? Who can I build trust with first? You have to do this intelligently. You cannot make friends with everyone you meet. But if you start to develop a different type of purpose-driven compass, then eventually you build something like what I've built, where I grew up as a college professor's kid with no real relationships to having a global network where, for an event in London, I'm inviting an internationally known human rights celebrity by WhatsApping her to go to my billionaire friends event with royalty. I'm not going, but I think they should meet. So I sent a WhatsApp. Like, that is power, but it's power that comes from understanding people first, not getting something out of it.
So obviously you talked about the huge network that you've built. What were the earliest steps that you took to create trust at that level?
You know, I didn't do this as well years ago as I might sound now, like when you write a book about it and you speak about all this time, like you become at least a little bit more eloquent. But at that time, I really interested in other people. And I've gone through things in my life from nearly dying when I was 12, from a sickness to having panic attacks. Last year, I lost my father. And I just learned to not really care about what somebody's reaction back when I'm vulnerable is, even in a business context. And by being curious and by being vulnerable and literally just being as real as I can be, I ended up building trust with people who trusted me enough to tell me what they needed. And before I built a community and had a best-selling book and a funded startup and all these other things, like I was this guy like walking around New York going like, Mason, that thing you do, like you should talk to Jerry. He does something like that thing you do. I heard both of you. Would you both take the call? And I just kept doing it. And not everyone's a connector. This is not something that everyone can learn it. People may not do it to the extent that I or the people who are better than me at it do in my network. But the data just shows, right? We did this, my co-author Noah Askin. I did a chapter on curiosity, and he dug into the data that a very tenured professor friend had done around curiosity. Can you guess in any, say, 10 interactions at a conference, how many people express any curiosity to you when you meet them?
Out of 10? Are you talking general or me personally?
You, just you, like you at a
You're saying if I
conference.
talk to 10 people randomly at a conference, what
Mhm.
people genuinely have curiosity in me or what I do?
Correct.
Give me a little bit more. What type of conference? Business conference? Were we there? Am I there as a speaker?
Let's say it's a conference on the future of work for which you were a panelist on day 2. And there are 2,000 people there all talking about excellence, careers, workforce transition, automation, AI, what the future will be, something that's maybe like directly in your wheelhouse.
Wow. I was, quote, under this example, I was on the panel
Yeah, you were on the
and there's
agenda.
2,000 people in the room. There might be maybe 10 that would come up and ask questions afterwards.
Yeah. And so what the stat that we found was out of every 10 you talk to, 3 will ask you a single question of substance back to you when you express curiosity to them. Meaning everyone is going to these conferences attempting to meet somebody to elevate their life. And 70% of them are doing it wrong. They aren't even engaging to engage with the people they're trying to meet. They're just engaging to impress the people to maybe get that right business card or hand out the right card still. And 3 out of every 10, when I say at an event, as I just did at a family office conference this past Tuesday in New York, people asked me where I've been for the last couple of months. And I said, well, my dad was in hospice. He passed December 1st. I spent a large amount of time in Florida with him. My business, a lot of it fell to the wayside. I'm still focused on my startup and I'm just starting to get back. And I said this to people I know who gave me hugs and checked in. I said this to strangers. 3 out of 10 said, I'm really sorry you lost your dad. I lost my mom last year. And the other 70%, I talked to probably 30 people, were like, well, can I tell you a little bit about my AI company? So like they literally glossed over it like somebody saying their dad died was enough of a conversation stopper, either to run for the hills or to just pause as a human to go, I live in fear of what happens with my parents every single day, or here's what happened to me. And I will tell you, the 100% of people who paused, they were the people I was supposed to meet. They
So
were the
I'm going to
ones that
tell,
demonstrated value back, humanity back.
I'm going to tell you a story that you just triggered a memory for me. I worked for a national sales trainer right out of college, and I was in my early 20s, so early career professional. And Brian Tracy was coming to speak in St. Louis, and he had a room pre-sold for hundreds of people to come listen to him talk on time management and things like that. And one of my previous mentors was personal friends with him, picked him up at the airport, said, Mason, would you like to join us for lunch? I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm a fan of Brian Tracy. I've met him twice. That was the first time. But anyway, we sat down for lunch and I introduced myself. And he talked about practicing what you preach. He put his hand on his chin like this, looked directly at me and said, so Mason, tell me about yourself. How did you get into this line of work? And I'm like, I remember this. We're talking over 30 years ago.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'd be happy to tell you, I said, but with all due respect, I said, I'm here to learn as much as I can from you. I already know about me. Tell me, like, I'm here to listen and learn. But, I went ahead and gave a little bit, but the gentleman who picked him up was a guy by the name of John Hauser, and John's since passed away, but he was a world-class human and very, very type A, former IBM executive. So white shirt, blue shirt, conservative tie, that dude,
Mhm.
dressed all the time, that guy, corporate guy. And he said, once they picked Brian up at the airport, they started talking and they're hustling and bustling and they're getting all into the conversation. And there were a couple of guys with him. Next thing you know, where's Brian? They were so into the conversation. He's over there helping some lady with her luggage. No one's watching. He wasn't under the microscope. There wasn't cameras around. This wasn't social media time. He was just aware of others in need in his presence. He was very aware of the things that were going on around him. And that guy practiced what he preached. And I will never forget that stuff. That's stuff that happens when no one's looking and that other people don't know about. And I wouldn't know about it if I didn't experience it or I wasn't friends with people who were right there when it happened. But Brian Tracy was not out promoting himself saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that. He just was a giving, kind person that was aware, and it wasn't about him
I
at
love
all.
that. Leading by example without an ego attached to it, like, especially when you talk about leaders, and especially like the world of like, well, who's selling the best? Like, it it all comes down to like, do you want your life to be based on numbers or do you want your life to be purposeful and valuable? Because I've
I'm just,
seen now, like, just the more
and
you
I'm
put
sitting
in.
here right now, I'm sitting here flashing back to 30 plus years ago, might be closer to 35. But anyway, like I remember him turning sideways and says, so Mason, tell me about yourself. Like I'm a 20 something kid out of college, my first real professional sales job. Now, granted, it was a great one, but I'm here to learn from this guy. It's a privilege to be at the table with this guy. And he is going to be speaking the next day to a seminar packed full, sold out room, hundreds of people that paid hundreds of dollars. Who's who in St. Louis was there. And this guy's sitting here asking me about myself. I'm like, couldn't believe it. Still don't.
If you can't give somebody your 100% focus, you're not going to get 100% back from them.
How, in your opinion, how should a founder think about curating their community differently at seed stage versus something like growth stage, if at all?
Yeah. So you get to seed stage as a founder, right? You've proven your concept. You're now getting some serious money, and you've probably done it right to build enough of a proof and enough of the potential. And then everything becomes, can you execute your vision so you can raise more money so you don't die as a company? Like, there's just these prescribed rounds in the world of founders where the closer you get to it, the further you are from the next one. And most people at every stage fail to ask for advice. They just want to pitch what they're doing, knowing that the numbers are against them. And so many friends at that level who haven't gotten to, say, a Series B or a Series C, even past the Series A that would come after seed, everything is relationship driven, whatever level you're in. And when you look back at the success of people who've gotten through it, who IPO'd, who sold, or who learned, unfortunately, in the American way of failing and then starting again, you see these as a ripple of relationships that you cannot visualize. So the mistake made at any level is focusing on only the people that you need right in front of you, as opposed to focusing on the people you will need down the line. So I used to work for a major, major billionaire family office. I ran a film company for them. And I'm still friends with some of the family. And I was sitting with one of them about a half year ago as I was raising my pre-seed round. And they asked to look at the tech and asked if they could send it on to their family office. And I said to my friend, this isn't what you guys would invest in yet. I have to prove a lot more until I be ready to respect your time. So I'll come back if I think I'm ready. But here's where I am. Most people, for this specific billionaire, would salivate over the thought of getting something in their family office. In my world, I said, this isn't right for you. And I respected what I know of them. And by saying no to an offer to pitch, they turned around and they said, well, there are actually a couple friends of ours who invest a little bit earlier. We often follow on to, you want to meet them. And now I'm in conversations towards what'll be my seed round with a few of these people because of who introduced me based on trust. And further than that, I have some people, very big funds and the rest in the world of venture or family office. They wouldn't touch my startup until I've proven millions in revenue. But I've got them excited about what the potential of what's happening. And as I keep them up to date, they're giving me ideas. And then when I'm able to call them up, as I am actually this week, tomorrow, to show what one of their ideas has become in my tech, I'm not pitching them. I'm showing that I heard them, something they asked for has value. And you can be sure when I go out for that round, if I get there, there's no barrier or limit to me being able to reach this person. I don't have to go through their secretary. I have to say to them, you thought you took me to the best hot and sour soup in New York. You were wrong. The best one is not in Chinatown. It's in the West Village. And I'm going to take you and I'm going to show you my tech. And then you can tell me if you think I'm ready for you. It's a different mindset, right?
There's
It's
something
just
you
a
said that
different mindset. Go ahead. Yeah.
this is your wheelhouse, but for the benefit of those listening, you talked about asking people for advice. For those folks that are listening, because I have been on the receiving end of some of those questions. Oh, can I take your time to get some advice from you? Sure. Happy to help and give when asked. But I don't think I'm alone here. But one of my biggest frustrations is dealing with, and I'm going to spell this out, ASKHOLES, ask holes.
Yeah.
Those are the folks that will take your time and ask for your advice and ask for your opinions, and then they don't do anything with it. They do what they were going to do anyway.
Or they took that euphemism of when you want money, ask for advice, and they lied to the person about taking their time when really they just want to pitch them.
Right.
And in my world, right? So like my tech, what I wanted to solve, which would be really incredible for your world and the world of everyone who listens to you. Everything has to move from cold calls to warm interest. The amount of robocalls or spam, like literally when somebody calls me asking about my old ex-wife's apartment that I don't have the right to sell, I block them, but then I actually block the entire real estate firm because they cold called me. I think that's invasive. Whereas sorry, go ahead.
So you're when you're talking about things like automation and things like that, what systems do you use to make introductions at scale while still keeping them personal and high quality? Because a lot of people are screwing that up.
This is why I'm building Soar Connect, because I could not find a startup technology or anything that kept my data private, gave me relationship intelligence, and helped teach me or others how to connect with permission as opposed to opportunity. Same stuff we've been talking about. Because the problem, right, is we live in a world where we think that a LinkedIn connection, a first degree, is an actual strong connection. Or a Facebook friend or an Instagram follower, or like I just posted something on LinkedIn and I have thousands and thousands of people reviewing it, replying it. It doesn't mean I have value to those people. It just means they read something in an algorithm, maybe for long enough to count as a data point. A trusted relationship is where you put time in. It's where you have longevity. It's where when we both finish this podcast, if our phones have been blowing up, who are the people who you get back to those texts first and you ignore the others for the next hour? So I wanted to study that and build a system for everyone that then when you take the world, if you can find out anything about anyone, it only matters if the person can introduce you to them or you can build a chain of connections. So I have built a personal CRM ask-based technology. There can be no ask holes in it because you can only ask to the people you've spent time with and that you trust. You can't make a new contact like social media. But now that we are connected and we have emailed, if you at some point, when my tech goes hopefully to a large scale, you go, you seem to be connected to this person. The tech has, shown me that you have connections that could benefit me. Here's what I need. Would you respect my time since I gave some to you? And the answer would be, of course, because we've built a rapport. We've been in touch. The intelligence in which you approach this podcast and the questions was of greater depth than the last 10 that I've done combined. And therefore, why wouldn't I return that respect back to say, hey, this guy did a podcast with me. This is why he needs to talk to you. Would you do it? But the gate is, you don't know who I know. You don't
Right.
know who I have trust with. Therefore, the thought was build an ecosystem tech that is based on individuals' trust, one person to one person. And this is why I decided in my mid 40s to raise so far $1,000,001 and launch a startup, because I could not find anything that either took my data, which I did not want to give, or kept giving me a lot of false leads, including somebody that I have blocked from my life because of how they were to me. And some other tech out there, some competitor kept suggesting we should reconnect.
So, how can leaders measure the health of their community beyond just revenue metrics?
You know, it's interesting because there's a lot of like social emotional technology. There's a lot of really great mental health startups in the workplace. In the end, right, that's such an individual need. Like, how do you measure the health of the people around you? Like, you can only measure the health of the people around you by being around them. You can only do that by seeing not who shows up on a Saturday at 8 a.m. because they feel compelled to, but how do you create a system, an openness, a forum to share ideas, to recognize not just the leader in each department, but the people who are performing well? And you don't do it because it's Karen's birthday or Jeffrey just had his 1,000th sale. Like, somebody's being thanked or even getting a bonus when they perform well. That's incredible for business. But what if you missed the fact that Jeffrey did that while ignoring the fact his dad was sick for 2 months? And what would the performance have been if you simply recognized that or knew he was going through that? And this is why this ongoing is different than the course correction. It's a different way to lead. When I ran a global foundation with boards in 4 countries and staff across different parts of the world, I knew what everyone was going through because I asked them. I didn't make it in every conversation, but there was no like, oh, happy Monday, can you do these things? And I would share the same. And then there would be no surprise when I needed more from them that they had given more before I asked because they felt they were part of something greater. And this is a different way to lead. A lot of people do it really well. And a lot of people work in that old school way, as per your question of, well, my sales team isn't performing well. These people aren't performing well. My friend's been in charge of the sales department for years. Why aren't they performing well? And usually the problem is their friend sucks, but it's their friend. And because they have the emotion tied to it, they're failing to see that everyone else has picked up the slack. And you can't have that without humanity, without conversation, without people feeling they could trust you to say, we really liked our sales lead, Brian, but once Mason came in, he showed us a few techniques that actually got us to be more high performance, but we've not been able to execute them because the team leader wants things done the old way. And when you don't have the ability to trust to have a dialogue, then you make assumptions. When you make assumptions, you make mistakes, and then you get judged on this in between that isn't about being purposeful and transparent for the outcomes you want and what it will take to get.
So, I have learned a ton from our conversation today. Lots of reminders, lots of insights, and I don't want to monopolize your time. So, just two more questions. That's all right. What habits or rituals have you personally developed to stay intentional about connection as your network has grown?
So the primary rule, which is my one rule to maintain membership in my organization, for which there's no paid membership, it's only based on action, it's to honor the chain of connections. I've studied this for years. In the end, there's a catalyst, which is the connector. From that, there is a chain of 2 to 5 more people to get to outcome. And most people thank the person who got them the outcome. In my practice, I thank everyone who was part of that chain, even if they were peripheral in my life. And I express gratitude to each of them separately and collectively for the value they gave me. And that practice gives you data, it builds community, and you look really good because think about the number of times, say this year, Mason, somebody's called you up and said, I just wanted to thank you for something.
I could count them on one hand.
Isn't that sad? right? And how many people have you helped that probably deserve that
A
thanks,
lot more than
right?
in my hand.
So in my world, right, I call up X person that everyone else would know, like a friend of mine who's a former WNBA star. And I left her a message the other day, and the message said, my Facebook, my phone showed up with a photo of the flowers that you bought me on the day we celebrated my dad's life back home in Florida. And I just wanted to say thank you because you took a step above anyone else I ever know for just making me remember and smile more about that day when we all grieved my dad. That's
That's
it.
human.
That's all I said, right? I've said this twice now, but she needed to hear it again because she needed to hear it. Saying thank you once isn't enough, but it's also incredibly strategic because when you help people who have demonstrated generosity to you and then you don't ask anything, they want you to ask them something more. They want to connect because we so rarely see the value we give or share that value back. And so people want to understand what they can do, like a simple practical step. Look at the trajectory of your life and look at the people who were a catalyst in it and write down. Mason did this for me here. I met Mason through my friend Brian, who I met through my ex-wife, Trisha. And I'm going to thank them all because this happened to me because of people who saw value in me and passed on that sacred relationship trust. If you do
That's
that for the few times in your life that you say something substantial, you'll understand you have a bigger, purposeful community around you, and you'll see what happens. Holistically, values driven, but also you'll just see what happens opportunistically from recognizing generosity with gratitude and daring to be curious and vulnerable about how you can help the other person with no expectation they'll do anything else for you again.
that is great advice. So if people want to know more about you and your work and your organization, what's the best way for them to connect and learn more?
So I've made myself pretty findable online. Like one of my emails that goes straight to my phone is on my website. But my world, right? The community is Orchestrating Connection. And that's the book. The startup is Soar Connect. But as of a few hours from us recording this, which means it will happen before we go live to the world, davidhoman.com is coming back into existence. Because I made this mistake of running around in all these rabbit holes of I have a book, I have a startup, I have a speaking series of all these things. And I got rid of what I started, which was looking at the empire of me. So now it's all there. It's being edited as we speak, but I always want to connect with people who are connectors. I'm really passionate about people who care about this world of startups or speaking about the book. But in the end, like I care about people who want to have a bigger impact than they have now. And if I can empower them by getting them to the right people who are never me, but are somebody else, then I do my job on this planet because I have one sacred job for everything I've built with this global network and big names and speaking gigs and all of that, which is I spend most of my life going, you don't need to talk to me. You need to talk to Linda. I just do it right because I've developed a way to care more about what I hear from others than what I need. And it took a little bit of getting over what I need in this moment because I have needs too. But it's so purposeful and profound. And my kids see this as a job now to be a connector, which is the proudest moment I have of all of it.
It has been an absolute pleasure, and you have an open invitation to come back anytime. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I hope those watching and listening have enjoyed it as much as I have. Thanks so much for being on today.
Of course, thank you for having me.